I just feel like this is a massive gaslighting scene. I mean, the Hakeem Jeffries comparison, I think, is so unfair. He's talking about redistricting. He's not talking about a human being. He's certainly not talking about a Republican. And you say Democrats went out and called Donald Trump a threat to democracy. Absolutely. The guy still doesn't accept the 2020 results, and a majority of the party doesn't as a consequence of the fact that he continued to proliferate that lie. The language, part of the being the most important person, certainly in the country and arguably in the world, is that you have great responsibility to set the tone. And Republicans who are out there criticizing Democrats right now are the ones who run from reporters in the hallways when Donald Trump has done something absurd, like celebrate Rob Reiner's death, or say, Bob Mueller, good riddance, whatever it is. And you say you can run through things Democrats have said?
Let me tell you something. When a story keeps changing, when the official version gets updated, then updated again, then the attorney general stands at a podium and says, "We're still looking at it," that's not transparency. That's damage control.
Donald Trump, enemy within, communists, Marxists, fascists, radical thugs, vermin, garbage, traitors, sick, party of hate, evil, and Satan. You're right about that data. It's disturbing. But the more important data to this is what's come out from Cato, which is where the violence is actually coming from, checking exactly the cause. There has been an uptick in left-wing violence. Absolutely, it is an issue. I want to solve it. But it's still more right-wing violence. And
not true.
It is true.
The studies are, a lot of them are rebuked.
Okay, well, the Cato one, I actually read the debunking of the Cato one, and look at the classification of a 2009 shooting, for instance, which was allegedly, according to the debunking, about a complaint about dog pee, and doesn't mention that the guy had been posting on a neo-Nazi site.
And what is emerging from the events at the White House Correspondents' Dinner is exactly that kind of slow, uncomfortable unraveling. And it connects to something much bigger than one chaotic night at a hotel ballroom.
Everyone is going to go to their corners on this. It is regrettable, but the truth should still matter in it. And conveniently forgetting that liberals like President Obama, for instance, who had someone shoot into the White House where Sasha Obama was, got up to the second floor. Secret Service for like 5 days didn't even know what happened until someone discovered that there was glass remnants in there. We don't talk about that. Or the pipe bomber from 2018 who sent pipe bombs to Obama and Clinton, for instance, George Soros, et cetera, in court said motivated and radicalized by Trump. The responsibility lies with all of us, but it has to start at the top here. And I agree with Charlemagne that that discussion is one that Republicans should start taking a part in if there is any way to come back together in this country.
So, number one, in terms of elections, there are people who still think George Bush is an illegitimate president. That never stopped for 8 years. It was unbelievable because of Florida. But I'm just saying,
but
in
Al
terms of
Gore
legitimate elections,
conceded.
but it was nonstop, and you had people protesting from day one. Al Gore.
He didn't.
So 2020, I guess it was, wow, that's so long ago.
So let's pull every thread. But first, I have to start somewhere that might surprise you. Fox News, specifically Jessica Tarlov, who said something on air that was so accurate and so direct that it would have fit perfectly on any honest political broadcast. Because before we get into the dinner, the Secret Service, and a $400 million taxpayer-funded vanity project, we need to address the argument that keeps getting recycled by the right, the idea that political violence in America is a rhetoric problem on the left. Tarlov broke it down cleanly. She pointed out that calling Trump a threat to democracy isn't inflammatory rhetoric. It's a documented political position held by millions of Americans, based on January 6th, based on his ongoing refusal to accept the 2020 election results, and based on the fact that a majority of his own party has adopted that same rejection of electoral reality because he kept amplifying it. She also ran through the actual language Trump has used publicly and consistently: enemy within, vermin, garbage, radical thugs, communist, Marxist, fascist, traitor, evil, Satan. Those aren't words from a fringe account with 30 followers. Those are words from the President of the United States at rallies broadcast nationally. By the way, Please leave your questions or comments in the comments section. I will answer each one individually as time permits. Also, I would be very happy if you liked the video and subscribed to my channel. Now, let's continue. And here's the pattern that never changes. When someone on the right tries to make the both sides argument about dangerous rhetoric, they can never name a comparable Democratic example. They gesture vaguely at social media, they find some anonymous account with a tiny following and present it as representative of an entire political movement. Meanwhile, January 6th is on video. The beat the hell out of that guy rallies are on video. The pipe bomber convicted in 2018 who sent explosives to Obama, Clinton, and others said in court he was motivated by Trump. The guy who shot into the White House during the Obama years, getting to the second floor while Sasha Obama was inside, that doesn't get mentioned. The responsibility, as Tarlov said, has to start at the top. And right now, the top is calling for what multiple legal scholars and members of Congress have described as genocide against an entire civilization. That is not a fringe position being shouted into the void. That is official U.S. foreign policy. Now, the dinner, because what we are learning about what actually happened that night deserves serious scrutiny, and the story we are being told does not hold together cleanly. Here's what we know. A 31-year-old man, Cole Thomas Allen, allegedly approached the event. A Secret Service agent fired 5 times at him. Every shot missed. Allen allegedly tripped and fell before reaching the ballroom. He was detained. And one Secret Service agent was shot in the chest, but was wearing a bulletproof vest and survived without serious injury. Now here's the part that Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche declined to clarify directly. According to reporting from Sky News, the agent who was shot in the chest was likely hit not by the suspect, but by gunfire from another agent. Friendly fire. In other words, the one actual shooting injury that occurred that night was apparently a Secret Service agent accidentally shooting a colleague. Blanche stood at a podium, was asked directly about the ballistics, and said, quote, "We want to get that right, so we're still taking a look at it." That is not an answer. That is a postponement dressed as an answer. And the reason to be skeptical of everything coming from this DOJ isn't cynicism. It's the documented track record of an attorney general who, by multiple accounts, is actively auditioning for a permanent appointment by managing narratives rather than facts. So let's be clear about what this means for the larger story being constructed around it. Because almost immediately after the events of the dinner, the Trump administration began using the incident as justification for resuming construction of the White House ballroom, a project that was already underway, already legally challenged, already controversial, and originally promised to be funded entirely through private donations. The historic East Wing of the White House was already demolished to make way for it before any of this happened. The ballroom was being built before any security incident. The security incident is now being used retroactively to justify the ballroom. And the price tag? Estimates are coming in around $400 million of taxpayer money for a ballroom in an administration that is simultaneously gutting healthcare, slashing scientific research funding, and telling working Americans that they need to tighten their belts during a period of tariff-driven price increases. AOC put it plainly when asked whether she'd support funding the ballroom in light of recent events. The president demolished a historic piece of American heritage that he had promised to fund privately and is now trying to change the rationale after the fact to make taxpayers cover it. In an era where people cannot pay rent or mortgages, spending public money on what she described as an ornate, unprecedented castle with zero accountability is indefensible. And she's right. Now let's connect this to something that happened on the same day, because the timing matters and the pattern is clear. Trump fired all 24 members of the National Science Board, the governing body that oversees the National Science Foundation, a 76-year-old institution that funds roughly $9 billion in research annually. Every member received the same email from the Presidential Personnel Office. Your position is terminated. Effective immediately. Thank you for your service. The NSB is not a political body. Its members are typically prominent academics and industry leaders who serve 6-year terms. Their job is to ensure the independence and integrity of publicly funded scientific research, the kind of research that produces medical breakthroughs, climate data, materials innovation, and the foundational science on which entire industries depend. Firing all 24 of them at once is not a policy adjustment. It is a demolition, much like the East Wing. And it sits alongside other cuts that have received less coverage than they deserve, including reductions to pediatric cancer research funding. So the next time someone repeats the talking point that if Trump cured cancer, liberals would complain about it, the factual response is that the administration has cut funding for pediatric cancer research and fired the Scientific Oversight Board responsible for ensuring that research continues. That's not opposition to curing cancer, that's opposition to the people doing the work. Here's the through line connecting all of today's stories. A security incident at the Correspondents' Dinner is being used to justify $400 million in taxpayer spending on a private vanity project, even as the ballistics story continues to shift and the Attorney General won't confirm basic facts about who shot whom. Scientific independence is being dismantled, board member by board member. The rhetoric of violence gets attributed to the party that isn't actively threatening to wipe out civilizations. And the media environment in which all of this plays out is one where the official story changes, the administration controls the narrative apparatus, and accountability depends almost entirely on people refusing to look away. Jessica Tarlov said it on Fox of all places. The responsibility starts at the top. The language of violence, the demolition of institutions, the rewriting of events in real time, all of it flows from the same source. A man tripped, 5 shots were fired and missed, an agent was hit, possibly by a colleague. And somehow, the conclusion being drawn is that we need to spend $400 million building a ballroom. That's not logic. That's leverage. And it needs to be called out every single time.